Tavach. We are up to Daf Yutes Amar Aleph on the bottom, so we have to make up Yutes Amar Beis, and then we'll learn Daf Chaf. So let's get started on the fourth wide line at the bottom of Daf Yutes Amar Aleph. Amar Rava Amar Rab Nachman. Omer Adam Levita Ktana. A person could tell his daughter who's a Ktana, Tzei v'kibli Kiddushay. Go and be makabel your own Kiddushin. Where do we see this? Rabbi Yosy bar Rabbi Yehuda, from the way Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda understood the concept of yield. Lav Omer Rabbi Yosy bar Rabbi Yehuda, Mois Harishonis Lav the Kiddushin Nitnu. Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda said that the Mois Kiddushin of yield is not the original kesef that was paid by the Adain to buy her. Rather, it is the remaining shiva that she has to work for the remainder of her contract. And only if there is still some malacha owing, do you say have a kedusha. So what's happening in essence? This ketana, her father's not being mekabel kedusha for her because her father is not in the picture and her father is not receiving anything. She's receiving the fact that her adain is relaxing and being loyal her shibud to continue doing avodah. So that's her receiving it, yet it's considered mikudeshes. Hachanami loishna. So too, if she's mekabel money based on the father's instruction, it will work. So of course, all the Rishonim over here ask, how could a katana be mekabel kedushin? How could you have das lahak noise? That's number one. Number two is, how could you bring a raya from yield? Yield is a special gzeres hakosov that it works. How could you stretch it from there to every case of regular kedusha? So Tosfos explains, and I'm going to explain Tosfos' shot with the explanation and the parish of the Heilig Estipel in Kelesh Yaakov. And he says as follows: there's two components to every kinyan. There's the das makna, the willingness of the seller to transmit his item that he wants, and then there's the ma'isa kinyan. One without the other doesn't work. I could want you to have my field, but that doesn't transfer the ownership of my field to you. You have to make a ma'isa kinyan, like chazaka, like kesef. Kiddushin is no difference. There has to be the das makna of the father, and then there has to be a ma'isa kiddushin. Where is yid unique? Yid is unique that it doesn't require the das of the makna. It doesn't require the das of the father. As a matter of fact, we're going to learn that if a person sells his daughter almanas that yid shouldn't be allowed, the mecher is kaim, the t'nai is batal. Why? Because built in to selling your daughter as an amma is yield. We do not require the das of the Bible. So we don't require the das of the Av to marry his daughter off by yield. That's exeres hakosov that applies by yield. It doesn't apply anywhere else. But the case that we're comparing it to, that Rava here is comparing it to, is when the father gave his express permission. Omer Adam Levita Ktana Tzei v'kibli Kiddushay. So now that he gave express permission to his daughter to accept Kiddushin, it's on a level playing field with yield. In yield, you don't need it, but over here in this case, we have it. So now let's go to the second step. A ma'isa kinyan. Normally, in a ma'isa kinyan, a ma'isa Kiddushin, who receives the money? The person who's being makneh. By yield, who's receiving the money? The girl. The girl is the object that's being sold. She's the product. She's the merchandise. She's getting the money. And that counts as a ma'isa Kiddushin. That's not the Kiddush of yield. That's regular Kiddushin. The whole Kiddush of yield is that it works b'al of the Av. But how the kinyan itself works, there's no change to that. The way Rabbi Yosy understands, she, the girl, the Amma herself, is being mekabel the kesef Kiddushin. Even though she is not the owner, she is the product. So too, Zok Rava, you can apply to regular Kiddushin. She's the one who could receive the kesef Kiddushin because she's the product. And we see from yield that this is a possibility. Continuing on to the third line from the bottom of Yutes Amar Aleph, V'amar Rava Amar Rab Nachman, HaMekadosh b'milva sheyesh aleh mashma. A woman borrows $100 from a man, and she gives him mashkin. The halacha, and what does he say? I want to be mekadosh you with this milva. The halacha is mikudeshes. Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. Once again, we see this concept by yield. Lav Omer Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. Mois Rishonis Lav the Kiddushin Nitnu. Again, Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda holds that the case of Kiddushin of yield is merely the adain being moichel, the responsibility that this Amma has to work for him. That's like a halva. Halva, he gufa mashkini, and she herself is the mashkin. And just like it's a good Kiddushin by Yiyud, so too it will be a good Kiddushin by a regular case of Mekadosh B'milva. And Tosfos asks, I don't understand. We've already discussed Mekadosh B'milva. And we said, the Mekadosh B'milva is not Mekudeshes. But if you're Mekadosh with the Hana'as Mechilas Milva, with the satisfaction that you're giving her at that moment, that now she doesn't have to pay back, that's a regular good Kiddushin, which we've already learned. Why do I need Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda and Yiyud to tell that to me? That's regular Mekadosh B'milva, which we know without any rayas. Regular logic tells me you're giving her something of value, that satisfaction that she no longer has to pay back. So it's a good Kiddushin. And that Tosfos is kasha. So I'm going to skip to the center of Tosfos. It's like 5 lines from the bottom into the bottom Tosfos. The Yeshloimar, the Heicha, the Ikam Mashkin, Garu Tvei. A regular Mekadosh B'milva works with a Nos Mechilas Milva. But if there's a Mashkin, that actually would make it worse. Why would it make it worse if there's a Mashkin? Zok Tosfos very beautifully, because the Loisamcha Daita, there, she's not going to be Samech Das if there's a Mekadosh B'milva when there's a Mashkin here. Kivan She'enei Machzer Lo Mashkin. Our case of Mekadosh B'milva is even if the lender holds on to the mashkin, even if he's still holding on to the mashkin, and he tells her, I want to be Mekadosh with the milva, that will be a good Kiddushin. Correct, Tosfos, how do you see that? How do you see a right to that from Yiyud? By Yiyud, who is the mashkin? She herself is the mashkin, yet he's giving her back to herself. So he's returning the mashkin. Zok Tosfos, which is Hainu Gufa. The Hagufa Mashkini, we're trying to draw a conclusion that in a regular Milvala Mashkin it works even if he didn't give her back the Mashkin. The Pshita lay, it's partial to the Gemara, the Ein Ikra Yid, the Chazaris Mashkin. The Gemara has the Pashtas, it's not the returning of the Mashkin, that's what's giving her something. What's giving her something is the fact that now she doesn't have to pay back. And therefore, just like that works by Yiyud, so too it will work by Milva Alamash. Okay, let's turn on to Amid Beis, which is your Testament base, which is still finishing up the daf from Friday. Zok the Gemara, v'chim yishayer b'shavar pruta, going back to Yiyud, if there's still a shavar pruta left of responsibility from this girl, this Amma, to do avodah, and that's what he's using as the kesef kedushin, umiyayit, have a kedushin, hacha nami lo yishna. Beautiful. Rashi explains, this is the third line from the top on Rashi, lav le kedushin itnu, ve'enim akacha, ela al yidei girayin, he's being Mekadosh with the remaining responsibility that she has that he's giving up. The Hava Milva, we consider that a Milva because she owes him that Malacha. Either the money, or Shavim, or their value with Malacha, that he asked the Mashkin and she herself is the Mashkin. Hakanami Loisha. Tanu Rabbanan. Ketzad mitzvahs Yud. How does Yud work? Omer Lo B'fnei Shnayim. He tells the Adain tells his Oma in front of 2 Eidim, Harayat miyuedesli, and that's what the Bach sticks in. Harayat mikudeshesli, Harayat mihuresesli, afilu b'soib sheish, even if he says this a moment before her 6 years expire, and there's absolutely no work that she can do in that time, meaning there's no value left, it still works. And what happens is of course, this does not work according to Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda, where there has to be some value left. This, of course, is going according to the Rabbanon, and the Kiddushin is being affected with the original money that the Adon paid the Av when he purchased the woman. That's now becoming Kesef Kiddushin. I like the lotion of the Gemara of the price of noig ba minute ishos ve'ein noig ba minute shivchas. It's a musar haskell to us that we have to know the difference between a wife and a shivcha. And once you marry her, you have to treat her like a wife and not like a shivcha. So I was suggesting, imagine it's right before the end of the 6 years, and he tells his Amma, my dear Amma, please make me a coffee. And she'll say, of course, I'd be delighted to make you a coffee. And then he says, and I want to be miyayid. And then she turns around and says, you know what? I'm not making you a coffee. Make your own coffee. I'm not an Amma anymore. Dr. Gemara Vayter. Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda argues on the Tanakam. He said there needs to be some value left in this contract in order for him to make yield. If there's still some time left, where there's going to be a shava pruta of work still owing from her to him, mikudeshes, then there'll be a kedushin. But imlav ain't a mikudeshes. But if not, it's not mikudeshes because there's no catch of kedushin left. Mocho la'omer, and I'm going to explain this like Rashi. Mocho la'omer, from one of these two halachas that we just learned, either the halacha of the Rabbana or the halacha of Rabbi Yosy, and we'll soon see which one it is. The Gemara is going to uncover and reveal which one it is that we're bringing a rye from. But whatever it is, from one of these two Tanaim, we're going to bring a rye to a different halacha. And what is the different halacha? Someone goes to a woman with kesef kedushin. He says, so the halacha is, we know that if at the end of the 30 days he wants her, then she's mikudeshes l'mafreya. So what happens if what if someone else came and was the kaddish in these 30 days? The halacha is mikudeshes l'rishon. We consider the kedushin of the first to have been chal at that moment that he gave her the kedushin, and therefore, when the second fellow came along, she was already a neshus. Who are we comparing this case to? It definitely cannot be from Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda, because Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda says beferish that the kedushin is only chal later by you, because he said ham yeshos b'yom kidei lachos ima shava pruta mikudeshes v'imlav loy. Right? Isn't that what he said? So clearly, the kedushin is not chal at the beginning. The kedushin is only chal at that point in time where he's saying harek miyedesli. So it must be Amar Abacha Barei de Rava. It's a mashal Rabbanon. It's a mashal from the Rabbanon. So we're being a raya. The Rabbanon say by yield. Then when is the kedushin chal? It's chal mafraya because the kedushin money is the original purchase money with which the Adon purchased this Amar. So too, when someone said it's the original kedushin money that creates the chalois kedushin. Correct Gemara Shita. So, what new thing have we learned from your moshe? Of course, it's all right away. What are we learning? What special chiddush are we learning from the Rabbanon of Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda that I wouldn't have known without you telling this great moshe? In the case of Yiyud, he didn't say anything about Me'achshav. That's just the system how it works. He bought her, and then later on he says Yiyud, and we're going to say it works Me'achshav because the original kesef that he gave was for Kiddushin, but he didn't say Me'achshav. So therefore, who said that you have to say Me'achshav? Even without Me'achshav, maybe it would work. The Mashmalan, our Tana, that you have to have said Me'achshav. Toysman doesn't like this shot at all, because if the source is the case of Yiyud, the halacha of the Rabbanon of Yiyud, and the thing that we're deriving from it is the case of Hareach Mekudesh Shli Ve'achshav V'lachas L'Shemyoim, we have two problems. Problem number one is In the case of Yud, no one ever explicitly discussed if someone came in between and was Makdash. That's not mentioned at all in the Rabbanon's halacha. Yet you want to derive from there a very big Kiddush. That in the case of someone said, that the second guy's Kiddushin is not a Kiddushin. That's problem number one for Kiddushin. And problem number two for Kiddushin is, what type of mashal is it? You learn from the Rabbanon to the case of Mayachshav. There was no Mayachshav said in the case of the Rabbanon. So Gemara doesn't matter, Kamash Malon. But then that's not a mashal. A mashal means you learn from A to B. You're not learning from A to B. Because A, you didn't say Mayachshav. You want to stretch it and say, even though you didn't say Mayachshav, but in the case of you have to say Mayachshav in the regular condition. That's not a good mashal. The Toydus flips it around. Toydus that mashal or Rabbanon is pumfaker. The halacha of Arayat Mukadeshes Mayachshav V'Lachish L'Shem Yoim, that's a raya to the Rabbanon. So therefore, now everything makes perfect sense. From the fact that someone says Arayat Mukadeshes Mayachshav V'Lachish L'Shem Yoim, and we say even if someone came to be Mekadosh or later, it wouldn't work. That's clearly showing that the Kiddushin was chal at the beginning. Well, that fits in perfectly with the Rabbanon, who by Yiyud holds that the Kiddushin money is original money. And now the mashal is good too, because you might say maybe it shouldn't be a raya because in the case of Arayat, you said Me'achshav, but you didn't say Me'achshav. The mashal that even though the source said Me'achshav, we could still extract to the item that we learned from that it will work even though he didn't say Me'achshav, because Yud is automatically like he said Me'achshav, because that's how Yud works, which the original Kesef Kiddushin. Tanya Idach. Now we have a brayta that's focusing on Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. Tanya Idach Hamoiches Bitei B'Alach V'Kitchel Achar Sichek B'Adon. Someone who sold his daughter. Now the other would want to make Yud maybe, what's that the option? And in the meantime, the father went and was Makabel Kiddushin from another man. So Sichek B'Adon, he's made a mockery out of the other, meaning he circumvented him. He's going to prevent him now from doing Yud, because she's married already. Clearly, Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. Clearly, Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda is saying that the Kedusha Yid is only chal when he actually makes the Yud. No, in Ratzal Yayid Miyayid, he could still make Yud. Why? Because as we said earlier, it's chal l'mafreya. Mashal, now we have a different mashal. Mashal lo'emel ish aret mukadesh li la'achar shloshim yom. Here is making a Kedusha that he wanted to be chal in 30 days. So from whom are we bringing a raya to this halacha? According to the Rabbanon, that's not the case. The yield is l'mafreya, and in fact, the yield would trump the Kiddushin of the second guy. The second mashal is referring to Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. The just like yield is only chal later. So too, if someone says Lachar Shloshim is only chal later. Make more pshita. Why would I think otherwise? At the end of the day, by Yiyud, he didn't say Lachar Shloshim. He just bought her, and then later on he went to Miyayider. And everybody knows that included in Yiyud, including in every purchase of an Amma, is the option to make Yiyud down the road. So maybe there it's like you said, Me'achshav. Kamash Malon, that no. It's not considered like you said Me'achshav, and in fact, someone who said it's only later. If someone came and made Kiddushin on this woman for 30 days, the Kiddushin of the second is a good Kiddushin. Again, Tosfos has the same issue with Rashi, and he also learns just the opposite. The halacha of Haret Mukadeshin Lachar Shloshim Yom, which says that the second fellow's Kiddushin is a good Kiddushin, is a raya to Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. Tanya Idach, we had another brayse. Hamoiches Bitoy. He sold his daughter, but he made it tonight, even though the Torah says that the definition of Amma Ivriya is that the Yud is an option. He decided that he wants to re-engineer, modify the rules of Mechiras Amma. The halacha is Niskai Meknai. The Rebbe holds you could modify the Torah's system. You can actually say that even though the Torah engineered an Amma system this way with Yud, I'm modifying and I'm taking an Amma Vriya without the option for you. It works. No. It doesn't work here tonight. You can't modify anything. Anyway, the Adam could still be miyayid. The father can't prevent that. If Nesha Hisna Alma Shekosa B'Torah, the Chalamat Alma Shekosa B'Torah, Tnoi Bottle, it's nice bottle. And this is what the Stipler referenced in his pshat that we learned, that you could bring a riot from here, from Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, that a person could tell his daughter she could be Makabel Kiddushin for herself. The Stipler said the Chiddush of Yud is that we don't need the das makna of the father to marry her off. It's even bakorach of the father, and he brought a riot from this chachamim who said that even if the father made a t'nai that I don't want to allow Yud to happen, doesn't work, because if the shishna mashakos b'Torah and by Yud it does not require the das makna the af. That is the chiddush of Torah by Yud. Anyway, we have a massive problem. Are you telling me that Reb Meir holds that you could be masna mashakos b'Torah? You could modify the concept of Abdus and remove from it the option of Yud. But Tanya, we learned that you cannot modify. You cannot modify something that the Torah sets up. The three responsibilities of a husband to a man is share ksus and aina. Now, these three rights that a woman have, I want to look at them closely. She'er and ksus are monistic responsibilities. Oina is a physical responsibility. It's not a monistic thing. But regardless, Harein Zuba Kodesh is a Pnai Batal Dever Meir. Dr. Meir, you can't modify Kiddushin. Kiddushin comes with these options. You can't say, I want to modify Kiddushin. It doesn't work that way. Right, Gemara, if Reb Meir holds that you cannot modify, so how can you modify the system of Abdus and say, I'm excluding Yud? If I can't exclude Sher Ksus and Oina by a regular Kiddushin, how can I exclude Yud from a purchase of an Amma every year? That is the Gemara's question. But let's see what Rabbi Yehuda's shita is by Kiddushin. Which means sharing ksus, you can delete from your marriage contract because she can be Michael. But Oina, which is a chiva guf, there is no mechila on that. So we have a steer of Meir. Reb Meir seems to say you could modify the yield contract, but you can't marry the Kiddushin contract. What's the difference? Amr Chizkiah, Shani Hacha, the Amr Kra, La'ama. It says, V'chiyimkar ish es bitay le'ama. If he sells her to exclusively be an Amma and not a wife. We learn from there that this is exactly how the Torah engineered the Parsha of Amar Vriya. The Torah said there's two ways you could sell a girl as an Amma. Either as a full-blown Amma or as an Amma less the right to do Yiyud. That's how the Torah set it up. So it's not called Masna Mashakos B'Torah. Actually, an Amma Vriya without the rights of Yiyud, that's actually one of the options of Amma that the Torah set up in favors. So it's not Masna Mashakos B'Torah at all. But the Torah never set up an optional Kiddushin without Sher Ksus and Oina. Therefore, you cannot possibly delete that from a marriage. Beautiful. So that means your mayor darshans a pasuk of La'ama. The Chachamim hold that you cannot modify a Amma contract to delete Yiyud. So what is he going to learn from the word La'ama? For Rabbanan Hai La'ama, my Abdullah. That's more simple. Hai mi boy lehu l'chidetanya. We learn it for, we need La'ama for a different halacha. La'ama malamed shemoicha l'psulim. You're allowed to sell your daughter even to a apostle, to a mamzer, to an asin. Now they're not allowed to make Yiyud. Technically, if they made Yiyud, it would work because Kiddushin is Tavis b'chayvei lavin, but they're not allowed to marry her because they're chayvei lavin. So from the Amma tells us you're allowed to sell your daughter as an Amma, even though she'll only remain an Amma and she won't be able to do a Yiyud because the Torah says Amma. Sometimes you can sell her where she'll only be an Amma and she'll never have the opportunity to do Yiyud. You might say it's a Kavah Chomer. Why do I need La'ama to tell me that you could sell your daughter L'Psulim? In the Kach L'Psulim, we all know that you could accept Kiddushin for your daughter from a mamzer. There's an Israel, but Kiddushin will be Toifis, so you could be Mekabel Kiddushin for your daughter for Psulim. So therefore, Lo Yimkren L'Psulim, if he could marry her off to Psulim, he surely could sell her to Psulim, even though there's an option for marriage. Zok Gemara, no. Just because we know he could be Mekadosh or the Psulim I wouldn't necessarily know that he could sell it a psulim. You know why? Because a person's hand in controlling his daughter's marriage is far stronger than a person's hand in selling his daughter. So since his hand is far stronger in marriage, that's why he could marry her off l'psulim. But who said he would be able to sell her l'psulim? Mal mekacha l'psulim shekein odam mekadosh espitai keshi naira. A person's hand in marrying his daughter's off is very strong. You know why? Because even after she's already an adult, after she's 12 and she brought simonim, the father still has control over her Kiddushin until she become a boygris. With such strong control, yes, maybe he could marry her off l'psulim. Yibkaren l'psulim. But Yibkaren l'psulim, to suggest that he can sell it to psulim, no. There he doesn't have such strength. A person can no longer tell his daughter once she becomes an naira. So his hand on her is much less controlling. Therefore, who said that he can sell his daughter to psulim? That's why we need a pasuk to tell us that he can. Beautiful. Rabbi Eliezer said, I don't need a pasuk to tell me, or I do need a pasuk, but I don't need this pasuk to tell me that he can sell his daughter l'psulim. I don't need a pasuk. It says in the pasuk, what if the other doesn't like this girl? He doesn't like this woman. He doesn't want to make you. What does it mean he doesn't like her? How could someone not like a flying Jewish girl? What he didn't like is that it's also for him to marry her because he's an apostle. Maybe he's a mamzer and he's not a marry her. Shirav and Yisrael. What is raw? Not he doesn't like her. Raw means marrying her would be raw because she's not allowed to marry her. So you see clearly that it's possible for someone to have an Amma who's also for him to marry. So I know already that a person could sell his daughter to psulim. So what is Rabbi Eliezer going to learn out of the word la'ama? He can even sell his daughter to kroivim, even though their yield will not even be a possibility. And if you remember, we had this machlokes in the last couple of days, whether or not when you sell your daughter as an amma, can you sell her to kroivim who would not be able to do yield because Kiddushin is not toifus in chayve priestess. We had that shaila, and Rabbi Eliezer said it's a non-issue. You could sell to kroivim. How does it? Rabbi Eliezer know that. Now we've uncovered the secret. That it says la'ama, you could sell your daughter even if she's only going to be able to be an amma. Well, I didn't. You might ask, why would I need a pasuk to tell me that you could sell your daughter to someone who's also to marry her with a chiv kares? I should know it from a svara from a kalachayim. He could even sell her to psulim. I mean, kroivim can't be as bad as psulim. He can marry her off to a mamzer. He shouldn't be able to marry her off to a relative. Even if you hate your relative, you don't call him a mamzer. You call a stranger a mamzer. So with that logic, it's possible he should be able to sell it to kroivim. So that's not a svara at all, because if you sold it to psulim, he could still technically make yiyud because Kiddushin is toifus in chayve lavan. But how could he sell it to kroivim? It will be impossible to do yiyud because Kiddushin is not toifus on an erba on the chayve creatures. Zok Gemara, for that we need a pasuk. Amar krola amma lamet shemoich krola. You need a word amma to tell you that even though logic would dictate that he cannot sell it to kroivim, the Torah is revealing with la'amma that he could sell it to kroivim. So let's do a little bit of an inventory of what we have over here. We have two options of to where to learn that you could sell it to kroivim, either from la'amma or from imra be'enei adonai. Now, Reb Meir does not have la'amma available because Reb Meir used la'amma to say that you could make a t'nai when you sell your daughter as an amma, that the option of yield is not available. So therefore, he's using lama for that. How will Reb Meir know that you could sell your daughter to psulim? Frank Gemara, Reb Meir l'psulim. How will Reb Meir know that you could sell a psulim? Nafkalei mehecha the nafkalei the Reb Eliezer. He learned it from Reb Eliezer limud. What is Reb Eliezer limud? Imra be'enei adonai. So Reb Meir could use that to teach you could marry a psulim, and La'abba teaches you that you could make a t'nai to delete the option of yield. What about Kroivim? How is he going to know that you could marry off your daughter to Kroivim? Again, Rabbi Eliezer used La'ama to tell you that. But your mayor needs La'ama to tell you that you can make it tonight. So that's not a problem either. Sovereign like Rabbanon. Rabbi Meir will disagree with Rabbi Eliezer. So now everybody has a place and every limit has a place. Zok to Gemara B'Acher. Tani Chada. We learned one bracha that says, he could sell his daughter to his father, but he cannot sell his father to his son, his daughter to his son, which is interesting because they're both an erva. Why one yes, one not? Which the Gemara will probe shortly. Now that makes sense. Is Kirabanan who argued in Eliezer that says you cannot sell your daughter as an amma to Kroivim. How in the world can you explain that? Why are you picking and choosing which erva is allowed and which erva is not? Come on, like Rabbanan, this can't be like Rabbanan, because according to Rabbanan, you shouldn't be able to sell it to your father. But like Rabbi Eliezer, because according to Rabbi Eliezer, you should be able to sell it to your son. So it's going according to Rabbanan. But let's think, if you're selling your daughter to your father, yes, your father will never be able to marry her because the father is an erva to a granddaughter. But the father might have another son. This other son is an uncle to this girl, and the uncle is allowed to marry his niece. So the Rabbanan say that yes, you cannot tell the Kroivim because there has to be a possibility of yield. But who said the yield has to come by the person who bought her? What about the person who bought her son? The Torah tells us the son can also do yield. So since there's a possibility for the son to do yield, that's good enough that it's considered not an erva, and you can sell such a person. Tanur Rabbanan. It says in the pasuk in Parashat Mishpatim about an Eved Ivri. In Begapa Yavoy, Begapa Yetze. And how does the Raisa, the Tanakama, explain this? Begufa Nichnas, Begufa Yetze. We'll see what that means shortly. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Yechidi Nichnas, Yechidi Yetze. He came in single, he goes out single. So, for the Gemara, what is this cryptic understanding of the Tanakama? My Begufa Nichnas, Begufa Yetze. And Eved Kanaini, if his other knocks out a tooth, knocks out an eye, the Eved goes free. And Begapa Yavi, Begapa Yecha means he has to go out complete like he came in. And if he was damaged, the other has to pay for it in full, like every other Yid, Nezek, Tsar, Ripoy, Sheves, and Boishes. That's what Begapa Yavi, Begapa Yecha means. Unlike an Eved Kanaini who walks free, and Eved Ivri does not walk free, he just gets paid fully for any loss. Correct the Gemara, I don't need Begapa Yovai Begapa Yeche to tell me. It says the what the Lashon apostle is the Chiyim Garish as Bite Lama she doesn't go out free like an Eved Knani Barasha Yagor. She has her own ways of going free. Sheishanim, Pigeon, Yovel, Simonim, but like the Teis Avodim. So from there we know she doesn't go out with Barasha Yagor. Zok Gemara true, but the Imei Hasam Havamina Neisiv Leidemei Einei Vinebo. Loy tends to contain Avodim. And then the Kanani walks free, but he doesn't get compensation for damages. Loy tends to contain Avodim. And then whenever he goes free, but also gets compensated. That's all he gets. He gets compensated, but he doesn't go free like an Eved Kanani goes free. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, he had a different shot in the Begapa Yotze Begapa Yetze. It's Yechidi Nichnas, Yechidi Yetze. He came in single, he leaves single. My Yechidi Yetze, Amar Nachman bar Yitzchak Hachi Ka'amar. This is what the pasuk means to teach us. Yesh la'isha ubanim. If he's married and he has children, when he gets sold as the Eved, then Rabbi Moshe Shiflach Nainis. Then his Adon has a right to force him to mate with a Shiflach Nainis to create children. But ein la'isha ubanim. If he doesn't, if he comes in single when he becomes an Eved Ivri, ein Rabbi Moshe Shiflach Nainis. His Adon cannot give him a Shiflach Nainis. What is the logic behind this? I once saw from a Baal Musar, very simple. A man who marries a shiksa, that's very bad. She's going to pull him down, pull him off to there. If he already has a Jewish wife and children, so he already has a life, he's already anchored and tethered to Yiddishkeit and tethered to his family. we're not worried that if he's forced to have a relationship with a shidduch knayis, it's going to pull him down. His family will protect him. But if he doesn't have any life on his own, he's not tethered to anything, and we put him together with a shiksa, it can cause a lot of trouble. Taner Rabbanan. What happens if he was nimkar b'man? So I'm going to use a number that's divisible by 6. It's a little easier. And I mean, 100 is divisible by 6, but I want to use something that is a whole number. So let's say he was sold for 6 years for $120, which would mean $20 per year. But he ate his Wheaties and he worked out. He worked out his glutes and his biceps and his triceps, and now he's a much more productive Eved. The Yomer al Masayim. Now he's worth for the 6 years $240, which is $40 per year rather than $20 per year. When he's coming to redeem himself, does he now have to redeem himself for $40 a year because that's what he's worth now? Or could he continue using the original purchase price to determine how much he has to bail himself out? Zok Gemara, she'ein mechash v'lo alamana, he gets the purchase price. How does he redeem himself? He redeems himself by paying back the original purchase price. What about if the opposite happens? Nimkar b'masayim. When he was first sold, he was worth $40 a year. But v'hichsit, and now he's only worth $20 a year. When he bails himself out, should he still pay the full purchase price at $40 a year, even though he's not worth that anymore? How do you know that he pays a lower price? He only has to pay back according to the work that he owes. So that he basically gets to burn the candle on both ends. He has the advantages of both sides. The Gemara is going to delve into that soon. But this pasuk that we quoted, Nikesav Miknasai, at Kafi Shanov, is by the parasha where a Yid sold himself to a goy. It does not say these words, where the Yid sold himself to a Yid. So for Gemara, maybe maybe when do we make it so lenient for him to buy himself back, that if he sold himself to a goy, it's easier to go free if you're a servant by a goy than by a Yid. The Torah clearly wants to get you out of that environment. And therefore, the Torah created a new way to get redeemed. Your family could redeem you. A regular Eved has to redeem himself. His family cannot redeem him. But for a Yid who sold to a goy, the Torah creates an extra release. His family could redeem him. So clearly the Torah is showing we want to get him out of there and make it as easy as possible to be removed from that environment. So therefore, that's why the goys had, the others had the al and the Yid to bail himself out only have to give the lower amount. But Nimkar Yisrael Minon, how do you know if he was sold as an Eved Ivri to Yisrael? How do you know he also has those advantages? We had this all at the beginning of the sugya. It says it's clear in the parsha of selling an Eved to a goy. It says here in the parsha of a Yid selling himself, make a Gzer Shava. Just like when a Yid sells himself to a goy, he has the benefit of both ways, whether he goes up or down, he can pay the lower price. So too when he sells himself to a Yid. Amar Abaye. Abaye said, I am feeling smoking hot today. I ate my Wheaties, I worked out, I'm feeling great. You can ask me any question in the world that you want to ask me in Torah, and I will be able to handle it no problem, just like Ben Azai was able to as well. He knew, ask me anything and I'll answer you. All right, Ani, Ben Azai b'shukit Tveria. Just like Ben Azai would go in the Sukkot Tveria and say, ask me anything. Here in Babel, I'm going to say the same thing. Okay, I have a good question for you. Mifti, let's think a second. We have two ptukim. One that says you pay a higher amount, one that says you pay a lower amount. But it doesn't have a parish in the pasuk which scenario each is referring to. Why are you dashing the ptukim where it's beneficial to the Eved? Maybe nidrishenu l'chumra, maybe dashing punfakeret. That when it goes up, he pays kefishana, the higher price. And when it goes down, he pays mikasef v'knasa. Why are you, by default, explaining the psukim where it's advantageous towards the Eved? It's not mistaber to treat the Eved harshly and make it difficult for him to redeem himself. Because we know the Torah actually favors helping out to Eved. Where do you see that? The Torah shows favor to the Eved. The Tanya says, when you buy an Eved Ivri, it has to be just as good for him as it is for you. You have to serve him the same high quality food that you eat, the same high quality drink that you drink. You shouldn't be eating white bread that you buy for $5 a loaf, and you make him eat all grain bread, even sourdough bread that costs you $30 a loaf. And I was just kidding. Today we pay more for a lower grade bread, but in those days the white bread was worth much more. So if you're going to eat the high end bread, you have to serve him high end bread. Or you can't drink 18-year-old Glenlivet and serve him red label. It doesn't work that way. Or you're going to sit on the most beautiful down-filled covers, down-filled duvets, and make him sleep on my pillow. Mikan Amru. From here we learn that kol hakoyne eved ivri kakoyne adon lat. You buy an eved ivri, it's like so. Therefore, you see the Torah wants to help and give the eved as good a situation as possible. So that's why it's logical to argue that we're also making it easier for him to redeem himself. So the question is, Lamaisa, what's the truth? Why in heaven's name would anyone ever buy an Eved Ivri if you're literally asking for trouble? So I once saw over, I don't remember from who, but I saw from one of the Achreidim, the Bali Moshe says an unbelievable part. Who is becoming an Eved Ivri? Someone who's a derelict. He's a Ganiv, and he can't pay back. So better than selling him. They're trying to rehabilitate him. So we need to put him in the home of a very, very chashuv, selfless, ehrlich person. The only type of person that would buy an Eved Ivri is only somebody who wants to help rehabilitate him, who cares to teach by example, to lead by example, and show this person how he needs to behave. So you're right, your average guy in a million years wouldn't touch an Eved Ivri. The only type of people that would buy an Eved Ivri are Yidden who are so caring and loving towards another Yid that they want to help and they want to lead by example how a person should behave. Give him the better thing. Take care of him. Chas v'sholom, don't steal from him. That's precisely how Eved Ivri was designed. Zok to Gemara, yes, you do find the Torah cares about Eved Ivri and wants to give him a relatively good life. He shouldn't be too tortured. But who said that we want to let him get out easy? Maybe he needs to serve a sentence. Maybe he needs to pay his debt to society. As we see, Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina told us. Holding your opinion, maybe not Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina, who says that we need to be somewhat harsh with an Eved. The Tanya Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina Omer, you know what is the first step in the chain of events that leads a person to hit rock bottom, to be sold as an Eved? It's because he was dealing in Avgosh Shviyas. He wasn't being over direct Isur the rights of Shemitah, but he was being over the dust of Shviyas, which means being noisev and noisein, doing business with Perish Shviyas. Why is that called Avgosh Shviyas? Zok Toysus and Rashi, that the deraisa Isur of Shviyas is to do work on the land, do an emes malach. That's Isur deraisa. How do we know you're not allowed to hoard Paris and sell it? We know that because the Torah says, you know what the Paris of Shviyas are for? Lo'achla. We dash it lo'achla v'loy l'schayra. That's a lava ba michlal asay, which is an Isra asay. So that's the afkash or ribis that we're saying this person violated, which led him into a terrible downward spiral. Adam noisev and noisev b'per Shviyas l'soif moiches metaltala. He'll have to start liquidating his valuable possessions. Shinemar, it says in the pasuk, at the very next pasuk, after the Torah is discussing the Shemitah year, the Samach we're talking about selling metaltlim. Rashi even adds that what happened? The person was in the Shemitah year, And he was selling, the Vechisimku was saying he was selling pairs of Shemitah during the Shemitah year, which is not allowed. Therefore, it leads him to have to start liquidating assets. Now, once a person's liquidating assets, he sees he's not doing so well financially, that should wake him up. That should act as a wake-up call. Hey, what am I doing wrong? What message is the Rebbeinu Shalom trying to send me that I'm struggling? But what if a person is oblivious? He doesn't want to think into things. He wants to flow through life and not contemplate what's going on to improve himself. What if he didn't feel what he should feel, what he should have noticed? It's going to lead, and he's continuing in doing his things that are not proper. He's no longer selling bicycles on Kijiji. Now he's selling his property. Because the next pasuk in the same parsha discusses kiyomech achicha u'mocher me'achuzas. Now the bride says, that's not going to end there. By the time he sells his field, the next he's going to spiral even further. He's going to have to sell his own home. The very next pasuk is kiyimkar bayis Moshe bircham. Now, if you notice, the first oynish that he got, he has to liquidating the talsman. The bride says loy hirgit if he didn't feel it. Loy hirgit means he could have, but he didn't. He could have felt it, but he didn't feel it. The other is already talking about. It sounds like it's already part of the chain reaction. The other, by the time this happens, it's automatically going to lead into the next level. So why did the bride refer to the first step with loy hirgit? To connotate that it's possible that he will be hirgish and stop the chain reaction. But for the second case already, the chain reaction, it seems already to be out of its control. It's working with Ravuna. Yeah, the first time he does an Aveira, he could still be hirgish. But if he's continuing to do the Aveira, it's mutter to him. How can it be mutter? Because you did it there that makes the mutter. Like in his mind, it's not so severe anymore. He's not concerned. He'll continue doing the bears. So therefore, if he was over the way Hirgish the first time, he's done. He's going to fall and fall and fall, and he's going to continue to lose assets. First, he's going to sell his metalflin, then his karka, and then even his own home. He's not going to wake up and stop this terrible spiral. The next step is to sell his daughter. Now, in this parsha that talks about all these sales, there's no mention whatsoever of selling his daughter. So where did the Gemara dream this up from? Shemar says in the pasuk, "V'chiyimkar ishas bitei la'ama." Zok the Gemara b'afagav the bitei like siva b'hayin yana. Even though there's no mention of selling his daughter in this parsha that we just discussed, that starts right after the parsha of Shemitah. Nevertheless, Hakamash Malon, the brides are teaching us. It does talk about borrowing money in the Torah here. And the Bride is telling us you're better off selling your daughter than you are borrowing with interest. Why? My timer. Barte migra v'nafka. When you sell your daughter, it's like a mortgage. If anybody knows where the word mortgage comes from a Latin word mort, means to die, is in moratorium, and gauge is a chayv. It's a chayv that's dying, meaning built into the structure of a mortgage is that it will eventually be paid off. Unlike credit card debt or line of credit debt, which just could spiral out of control, a mortgage is structured that it's going to be eliminated. So that's really when someone sells his daughter, she's going to come back after the 6 years, guaranteed. It's going to be over. But lending beribis, the ribis can add up that I'll never, borrowing beribis, the ribis can add up that I'll never be able to dig out of this hole. Okay, the Marsha asks an interesting kash over here. Why are we talking about he shouldn't sell his daughter? Why doesn't he sell himself? So the Marsha talks about this a little bit. He learns a little bit not like Rishonim. Says Dr. Gemara, my time, why is it better to sell his daughter? Barte migra v'nafka, she's going to use up her time and then she'll come back home. But the interest will grow and eat them up. After he sells his daughter, he's going to start borrowing with interest and he still needs money. שנאמר וכיומך אחיך ומטה עמך וסמך לו אל תיקח מידי נשך בשר. So clearly we're talking about borrowing for ribis, and that will spiral down even further. Eventually he's going to have to sell himself. And then it's going to get worse. He won't sell to you, he'll even sell to a ger. But not only to a ger tzedek who's shomer Torah mitzvahs, and a ger toishav who's makbid not to do avodah zarah, but he doesn't keep any of the mitzvahs. Then the Torah says mishpachas ger, which is even worse. That's a guy who even does avodah zarah. You're going to have to sell yourself to someone who is doing business with Perish Shvius. And then the puzzle goes even one step further. Rahman Latzlan, Kishu Omer Le'eker. Le'eker means getting a job in a church to schlep for them, not actually doing avodah zarah, but working in a church where there's avodah zarah around. Turning on Talmud Beis. So, Dr. Gemara, you see that Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina is very, very stringent and hard on the Eved. So maybe when he's redeemed, maybe he shouldn't get the better end of the deal. Maybe he should get the worse end of the deal. If I answered, yes, the pasuk is very hard on the Eved, but at the end of the day, the Torah comes to his rescue. The Tani, the very Rabbi Shmuel, Hoil v'halach zeh, v'nasa koimer l'avodas kachavim. Since this person already reached a point where he's already working for the Goyim, let's just throw him to the wolves, let him fall into oblivion, let's give up on him already. Zok Torah, we never give up on the Yid. We always come to rescue the Yid. Talmud Leimer, Acharei Nimkar, Geula Tialoi. You always try to save him. Correct Gemara, that doesn't necessarily mean that you make it easy. Sure, we want someone to lays and noise, but who said that he gets the better end of the deal? Yes, we're coming to the rescue. We don't want him to become a goy, but that doesn't mean we don't want him to suffer as an evid a little bit. And maybe Halainian Pidjain, Nachmur Alei, Midi Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina, but Lagabe redeeming him, let's make it a little hard for him. He deserves a little bump and grind because he was doing business with Perish Shvius. Omer Rab Nachman Yitzchak, we have another pasuk to reveal that you give him the better end of the stick. Shrei Kroi Ksivi, we have two psukim. Ksiv, again, by a guy who buys an Ivri. Im Oid Rabois Bashanim, if there's a lot of years, Ksivim Atnish Bashanim, if there's few years. Are there ever any more than 6 years? Are there less than 6 years in the normal contract of an Eved? Ella, you need to dash in this book. And you need to say, if it's oid rabbis b'shanim, meaning his value went up, he redeems himself based on the original purchase price. But it's ma'id kasboi, if it was ma'atnish b'shanim, meaning he's worth less, if he gets to pay the value that he has now, which is less. Who said that's the way to learn the pasuk? Maybe learn the pasuk with pasuk pshat. If he worked so far 2 years and he has 4 years left, because of the he has to pay for 4 years based on the purchase price. And over dollar the pasuk l'tarti. But if he already worked 4 years and he only owes for 2 years, he should give the value of 2 years. Maybe the Torah is telling you pasuk pshat. Dr. Mara can't be. Because in Kei Nichlev Kra, in Moed Rabbi Shanim, there's many years left. In Ma'at Nisha Shanim, if there's fewer years left. But if there's Rabbi's Bashanim, Ma'at Bashanim, we learn from there, in this Rabbi Kasbay Bashanim, if his years became more valuable because of the Knasa, he still only has to pay back based on the original purchase price. This Ma'at Kasbay Bashanim, but if the value went down, Kafi Shanim. Who said this drasha? Rab Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Amar Rabbi Yosef Darshini Rab Nachman Lahani Krok Sinai. Wow, Rab Nachman darshan these psukim like Har Sinai is so beautiful. Boy Minei Rav Huna Bar Chanina Rab Sheshes. Rav Huna Bar Chanina had the following shaila of Rav Sheshes. Even if Hanim Kalev B'Chol. an Eved Ivri who was sold to a guy. And let's say it's going to cost him $100 to redeem himself. But he doesn't have $100. He only has 50. Could he at least give 50, and at least it'll knock off half of your year's remaining? Why would you say yes? Why would you say no? The teretz is because in the parasha of Stei Achuzah is a field that has been in your family for generations and generations, backdated until the Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael and Yeshua divided up Eretz Yisrael. If someone sells such a field, the halacha is it automatically comes back to him by Yovel, but he could even redeem it once he waits 2 years. He could redeem it at any time for its value. Now, there, by Stei Achuzah, you can't redeem part of it. If the time remaining until Yovel dictates that the redemption price is $1,000, he can't say, here's 500, I want to redeem it for half of the time. It's either all or nothing. And we know that because by the pasuk of redeeming a field, it says as follows. It says, "Ve'ishki lo yia loy goyel ve'yisiga yadai umatza kedei geulosai." He found enough money to completely redeem the field. So by Stei Achuzah, we know there's no halfsies. You either have all or you can't redeem the field at all. So Zok Gemar Gulasai Mistei Achuzah Gamar. Do we learn the Geula of an Evet from the Geula of Stei Achuzah? Mastei Achuzah and Nigel Chatzai and Stei Achuzah you have to pay in full. You can't do a half redemption. Afainami Eini Nigel Chatzai. So too the Evet you cannot redeem halfway. Maybe what do you learn from Stei Achuzah that you could continue? You can redeem him up until Yovel. But maybe the chumrah that you have to have the full amount, maybe that part we don't learn from Stei Achuzah. Amar lei, so we answered. So Reb Sheshes answered back, Lab Amar Tassam, didn't we learn a couple of days ago what happens if they're selling him because he stole and he doesn't have money to pay? But he owes $500, but if they sell him, he's worth $1,000. What did the Gemara tell us back then? Nimkar kulim leichetcha. You could only sell all of them, not half of them. And since he's worth much more than what he owes, he's exempt. They don't sell him. So you see, by avodim, there's also this concept of all or nothing. Therefore, when it comes time for him to redeem himself, if he doesn't have all the money, it's not a redemption at all. Right off the bat, we assume that it's a benefit to him if he could redeem himself part ways. Zaktabai, don't think it's all hunky-dory. In certain scenarios, it actually will work against him if we let him redeem himself part ways. And Abai is going to share with us the specifics of these cases. Let's start off Lakula. Where is it beneficial to him to pay the lower amount? Very simple. Zavnei b'meya. He was sold originally for 100. Yoiv lechamshin. And he paid 50, which is palga de dummy, which is worth half of his amount. So I assume by paying 50, he's not going to walk free now. It just means that he has 6 years left, and he paid 50. It means in 3 years he'll be able to go free. So right now he's redeeming himself so that he'll be able to be released 3 years early. So Yoiv lechamshin palga de dummy, and then by the time the 3 years arrive, the Ashbach now is worth more money. The Kamal Masa, and he's now worth double what he was worth before. If you hold that he could be goyal himself halfway, so let's figure this out. He was already goyal half of himself, and that half was how much? 50. Now he's worth 100. So how much would he have to pay to redeem the other half? Since now he's worth 200, the other half would cost him 100. The Yovel may even up. He'd have to give now another 100, which would be a total of 150. But if you hold, he's not nigel chatzayin, and the $50 that he gave originally didn't goyal anything. It's just like giving it to the other to hold in the escrow. So then Yovel may have a chimshin b'nochel. He'd have to pay back 150 in order to walk free. So let's look at this again. He originally was worth 100. He bought himself back with 50, which means he bought half of himself. Then he went up. The old nigla, then the other half that he has to pay for is worth now 100. So he has to give 50 of that. So now in total, he was able to get away. I'm sorry, the other half, the other half is only worth 100 because he already redeemed the first half. So he gives another 50 and he's good to go. So in total, he gave 100. But if you hold, so when he gave the first 50, it didn't do anything. It was just a pickup. Now he's worth 200. He's going to have to give back 150. So I'm getting confused over here. So let's look at this again. Lakula, Zovni b'meya. He was originally sold for 100. Yoiv lechamshin, and he paid 50, which is palga the dummy, which is half of it. And then the ashbach, then he became worth more. The kamal mos, and he's worth 200. So if you hold that first 50, bought half of him, then he already owes half of himself. He only owes half. The other half, now that he went up in value, is worth 100. So Yahavle Meya, he has to give another 100. V'nafik, and he'll go free. Because the first half he bought for 50 because he was worth less than. The second half he bought for 100, it's a total of 150. But the Amrit and Nigel Chatzayin, if you all the first 50 was just a precaution, he didn't buy anything. So then, since now he's worth 200 and he didn't redeem any part of himself, he owes a full 200. So he already gave 50. He's going to have to add to it Me'er V'nafik. In total, he'll have to pay 200. So you see, there's a big kula if in fact he was able to buy himself back with half. Frankly, Gemara, this case that you're offering as an example makes no sense because we already learned that if he goes up, it doesn't matter. He only has to pay the lower price. Frankly, Gemara, how could that be? This Rabba Kasboy is Mikesef Miknata. So that's not a good example of how we could save money if we hold that he could be put himself halfway. So the case must be is going to Oiker Vizol the Oiker, which means that the purchase price was 200, and now he's also worth 200. But there was a time in the middle where his value dropped. And it was at that time in the middle when his value dropped that he quickly paid himself off half. So let's think about it. He was originally worth 200, and he's worth 200 now. But in the middle, he dropped to 100, and he quickly paid off half. If that's considered paid off, then when it goes back up again, he only has to pay 100, which is the other half, and in total, he redeemed himself for 150. But if the 50 that he gave when he was cheap doesn't count for anything, well, then when he goes back up, he owes a full 200. So he has to give that 50 that he originally gave, and he's add 150 to it. So there you see there's a huge advantage to him if, in fact, the 50 that he gave originally would have been paid to half of it. How about l'chumrah? Sometimes, if his pidyon works halfway, it'll actually cost him money. Why? Zavna b'mosa. His original purchase price was 200, and Yoiv Meya targeted dummy. He paid 100, which was half of his value. The ichsip, and then he dropped in value. The kamal Meya. So let's think about it. If his first payment of 100 stuck, and there was a pidyon of a half, so that was already redeemed. Now that he dropped in value, half is only 50. So in total, he redeemed his first half for 100, second half for 50. It's a total of $150. But if you hold his first payment of 50, or his first payment of 100, was not valid because he wasn't totally redeeming himself, well, then Hanach Meya, when he paid 100, he wasn't redeeming himself. He was still fully enslaved. It's just a pikadon that his Adon is holding. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen is now he dropped in value. He dropped in value, and he's no longer worth 200. He's only worth 100. So therefore, Yavun Heli, that 100 that he gave originally, nafek, and he'll go free. So sometimes, as you can see, it works to his advantage for his opinion not to be opinion. If he made the opinion when he was worth a lot of money and he dropped in value, it would be much better for him if his original opinion doesn't count at all, and then he could do the full redemption after he's already dropped in value. Beautiful. So that takes us to the end of today's sugya. Tomorrow in Rich Hashem, we're going to pick up with the Shaila Boimne Rafuna Barchina Rab and we're going to be discussing the different cases in the Torah where the Torah talks about redemption. And there's 4 cases that we're going to discuss. We've discussed the Eved who wants to redeem himself. We discussed Steh Chuza. We're going to discuss tomorrow Bote Arechaima. The halach is if you sell a house in a walled city, you have 12 months to redeem it. And if you don't, you lost it permanently. And then we're going to discuss Hektik. If you're Maklish Steh Chuza, you could redeem it up until Yovel. If you didn't redeem it by Yovel, it goes back to the Kohanim, and it goes back to Hektish and Yovel, and it's distributed to the Kohanim, and you lose it permanently. So these are the different shilas that we're going to discuss tomorrow. Be'ez Hashem Yisparach. I want to wish everybody a good tavach. I'm actually just getting ready to leave. I'm going to be driving through the night to Lakewood because I'm making chasna Monday night. But we're going to continue with all the shiurim as normal on Zoom. So tomorrow we'll learn at 7, and we'll learn again at 9, and the rest of the week it'll be 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. Have a good tavach, everybody. Thank you so much.